What up, team? It has been a minute. It is good to finally talk to you guys again. It's good to get back into making videos. I am back, ready to roll. As you can see, I already look good as fuck. Man, that is some clean ass fucking drip. And yes, that is the Goblin Troop with his little wood harp violin thing. And yes, I am in a town, so everyone has to listen to it. Fuck everyone around me. Act 8 is in fact my realm of terror. Should you step foot here, my boys will hit you with their shitty little show tunes. You see him with his little sticks? He's ready to pop off. He's ready to bang out. Oh yeah. Oh, look at him go. Oh my god, what a solo. Anyways, today I want to talk about the Phrecia event and how it kind of overlaps with PoE 2 in terms of like a really problematic design, in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, before we go any further, I understand that these were scrapped ideas, that they kind of just threw something together, that they did what they could, and I am absolutely very appreciative of having the Phrecia event. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, even though it has been somewhat of a slog. To be totally honest, I'm actually kind of glad we're not going to see 0.2 till around 2035. I actually do want a little bit more time to complete this league and build some more characters. With that being said, the main reason I want to talk about this is because I think game design is interesting, and I think this problem is a bit of a tricky one. It's fairly complex in terms of how it should work or how it shouldn't work, although we do have a solution for it already, but I'll get to that a little bit later. To define the actual problem that I'm talking about, when I was playing Phrecia League more towards the end game and I was grinding through it, what I slowly started to realize is that it felt a lot like PoE 2. I got a ton of the same feelings that I had when I was grinding endgame in PoE 2 when you were trying to build your currency strategy and trying to get your endgame off the ground. This would lead me to making this video and thinking about this problem a lot because I really wanted to understand why I was getting the same feelings and like what are the exact similarities between Phrecia and PoE 2. And I think that this was one of the more difficult things I've ever had to really put into words, oddly enough. Like, it was really hard to describe. And even now, I don't think that my thought on it is complete. I still think there are things that I'm missing, but this is kind of generally what I've come up with. In the Phrecia event, one of the major changes was that the Atlas tree was removed. So instead of progressing your endgame through the Atlas tree and getting Atlas passives, it was all replaced by the idle system. The idle system effectively just rolls really juiced up, crack the fuck out versions of Atlas passives on these little idols that you see here. You then have this inventory similar to a Trials of the Sekimas or a Sanctum relic inventory, and then you build it out using what you have available. You unlock some of these slots by doing the original Atlas quests of, like, you know, kill the Shaper, kill an Elder Guardian, that sort of thing. This effectively meant that in the Phrecia event, in order to get your div per hour up or to build out your currency strategy, idols were required. Similarly, in PoE 2, in order to get your div per hour up, you required rarity on gear and boss kills. And when I say boss kills, I mean all the little things like the invites that get you the Atlas points, because the Atlas points for each of the individual leagues were so potent. They were such a huge deal, and they were very similar to idols in terms of permanence and the amount of output and exponentiating effect they gave you on your ability to farm. Now, I can imagine most of you are looking at this and thinking to yourselves, holy shit, are you a fucking wizard, Harry? How'd you come up with this? Everyone relax. I promise I have more, okay? So with all that out of the way, I wanted to compare endgame progression for all of PoE 2, Phrecia, and a normal PoE 1 league. But first, let's head some of our conclusions to hold the demons at bay in the comment section. First and foremost, I do not claim any of this as general fact. I understand that people's progressions feels completely different. I understand that someone might have a totally different experience. I get that. This is my general interpretation of kind of how it goes for me, and I do feel like this is relatively generalizable. Maybe, you know, there are some things here and there that are arguable, but I feel like generally speaking, a lot of people will feel somewhat similar to the progression that I'm referring to here. The main purpose of these graphs is to more or less visually show the core problem that I'm talking about, which is that in a trade league, okay, before the SSFers come fucking clacking in on their 80-foot tall horse, in the trade league for both PoE 2 and Phrecia, what it felt like constantly was that you had to make a choice between either power or farm output. You could never do both at the same time, and that's what these lines are trying to represent here. We imagine this is the beginning of this line at this point right here. Say that this point is this right here or something like that. These two are equivalent. This is what I'm referring to. As you go up here, this must plateau here because you can only choose one over the other. Whereas if we look at the progression of PoE 1, this was really never the case, or at least never felt this way to me anyway. You start at maps, you kind of build up, you get levels, this is just levels, small gear upgrades, that sort of thing. And then you start saving up and grabbing bigger upgrades and so on and so forth. But at the same time, your farm output and your progression in this regard never stagnated relative to what your power was doing because you have the Atlas passive tree. What's occurring here is that as we are slowly progressing through our Atlas and building up our leveling Atlas tree, we're adding extra things like maybe a little bit of expedition, maybe harvest, some early easy stuff to do that just builds you currency over time. And then this shift right here is going to represent your first initial farming strategy where you have your atlas completed and now it's time to invest it all into money making things, and then you'll run that for a little bit, which is normal, and then we'll have the hit where now we have enough character power to where we can actually do map modifier effect, which will be like right here, and then you'll run that for a while, and then like a scarab strat, T17s, blah blah blah, and eventually to the moon. This is kind of how it feels, at least for I think a general approach. And what's nice about this is that character power, all of the money and currency that you feed into this is what allows you to build up this and allows you to further progress into the end game and ultimately into higher farming strategies. In the case of PoE 1, the way that currency is used between power and farm output is synergistic, whereas in PoE 2 and in Phrecia, they feel fairly dichotomous and oppositional to one another. To be more specific on the details of what's occurring with PoE 2 and Phrecia, what it feels like is that you want to get your character to a certain power level, or they need to reach a certain threshold where they can relatively efficiently farm and do okay, and then you just want to fucking plant them there so you can then swap over to dumping all of your money into things for farm output. So this would be something like, you know, maybe this is rarity or whatever, and maybe this is an audience of the king, right? This would be in PoE 2. And for Phrecia, this would just be idols, right? You buy some idols here, right? Get maybe like a decent setup going, and then maybe a few upgrade right here, and then boom, we get a big fucking hunger idol after saving for all of this time, right? Or, you know, whatever it looks like. And again, in PoE 1, all of your farm output is just coming from Atlas passives, right? And then you're just juicing your character power with all of your currency. And then there are scarabs, but I'm going to talk about those in a minute. Naturally, I think the conclusion that someone would draw from this explanation, all these graphs, is that, okay, if progression is ever locked behind a paywall, that is bad. To be honest, I'm not totally sure how true this actually is. I think there are some things that are okay with being paywall. For example, I think scarabs are fine. Or another thing that someone mentioned when I was discussing this was, well, what about investing in your character? All content is paywall behind character progression. However, I think that that is a good thing. The whole point of PoE is the pursuit of character power, right? Like you're trying to get the big fucking axe. The big axe. And while there are of course other reasons to play PoE, I'm sure, I do think this is one of them, and I think this reason is why it feels so bad when you have to choose between either upgrading your character or just dumping money into getting more money, which is exactly what idols are, and that's exactly what rarity is in PoE 2, and it's somewhat loosely what getting your League Atlas passes are in PoE 2 as well, although there's a bit of a difference there because you can make your money back, and in some cases you can make way more back, but it's gambling, blah blah. I won't get into that. Of course, the natural follow-up question is, well, why are you okay with scarabs but you're not okay with realm gate items, rarity, and idols? Realm gate items being audiences with the king, reach stones, etc. And I think the fundamental underlying difference between the things on the left and the thing on the right is the permanence of the benefit, because what every single one of these items has in common with all of the others is that they all provide absolutely massive benefit to you once you acquire them. The only actual difference between these items, between scarabs, rarity, and idols, and realm gate items, again, provided you're not getting the big ticket drops, right, that you're literally getting your 1C unique, fuck off, okay, you're just getting the Atlas passive points, thank you. The only difference between these is that this one is temporary and all of these last forever. Once you have all of your audiences with the king, you have all those Atlas points forever, and they make you make bank. You will never lose them. It's the same thing with rarity, right? Once you get rarity on gear, that rarity will stay there until you remove it. It will benefit every single map that you run from that point forward. Idols and scarabs are literally the exact same thing. They are the exact same thing. The only difference is that one is a single use and then one is not, right? Like imagine the scarab that turns all the monsters into strong boxes. Imagine if that was a permanent scarab. What's the cost on that? Like a gazillion divine, right? And that's really why I point to permanence at kind of the heart of what the differences are and like what the main thing that's going on is, because I think that if all these items were single use or they didn't last or they're for a single map like a scarab is, it naturally puts a limiter on how much they can cost. They don't create these ungodly paywalls that you see of some idols being worth mirrors, right? Or potentially that strongbox scarab being worth a mirror if it was permanent. On top of this, not only does a lack of permanence kind of mitigate the amount of cost they can truly have, but it also theoretically makes the actual benefit much more local rather than this sort of long-term thing. For example, I might drop 60 divine on a strongbox idol that gives me 20% map mod effect, and that's not going to pay off for like another 50 to 100 maps. God only knows how many maps it's actually going to be, right? Whereas scarabs, because you are buying them and using them per map, theoretically, again, I'm not totally comfortable with saying this, but I think that generally implies that their benefit is going to be much sooner. You're going to see that maybe in, 2 to 3 maps or something like that, where it feels good to run, right? It feels good to blow all that money because you're going to get it back really quick. Once again, compare this to something like Rarity in PoE 2. Oh boy, can't wait to spend 5 div on this fucking potential side grade, hopefully probably is a downgrade, to get 3 extra exalts for the next infinity maps. Yeah, bitch. Between fucking towers and Rarity, I hope we never get off this ride. But anyways, moving on. The final thing I'll leave you with is my ultimate conclusion that I've drawn from both PoE 2 and Phrecia, which is that the PoE 1 Atlas tree and Scarabs and all of the endgame in it is the single greatest endgame ever made. I think that is what all of this has taught me. It is that the Atlas tree is a fucking work of art, and god damn, do I miss it so dearly. But lastly, I just wanted to reiterate, like, this is not to shit on Phrecia at all. I think Phrecia is a really fun event. I'm very appreciative that they're doing it. This was literally just some food for thought, something to throw out there, kind of see what you guys think, that sort of thing. Wink, wink, Brian H. If you want to come out and give us the essay, help me out here. Thanks, bud. Other than that, I'll see you guys next one. Deuces.